Hey, welcome everybody to Ask Reds Rhetoric. Hey, this is going to be kind of like Ask a Philosopher, only with somebody who knows nothing about philosophy, aka Reds. You could pretty much ask them anything about flat Earth. Maybe a flat Earther wants to call in or be in live chat. Now, don't call in normally. Will show your phone number, so please don't use the phone lines. I've taken them out of the video description and on the tab itself. So just use the meeting ID and actually join us via Zoom if you want. I actually have to approve that, so it eliminates snipers, trollers, um, bombers, and all that other kind of things. So I do have Reds Rhetoric here, the infamous Reds Rhetoric, flat Earth debunker extraordinaire, and we were just having a long, involved discussion on whether the word Earther should be capitalized, because I'm a little confused on that. So I'm going to ask the first question here to Reds Rhetoric. Should Earther be capitalized?
Yes.
There we go. I think it's an odd word, Earther. I mean, what are the options? Marser, Saturner, Venuser? I mean, what is Earther?
It's kind of like how I imagine speaking Spanish would
Venuser?
work. You just add O to the end of every single word, and they're Spanish. So, or I don't know, adding Z at the end of every word, and then you speak some, I don't know, Greek or something. I'm not sure. I'm not sure
No, that's
how
no,
it
that's
works.
pretty much
But
in Spanish. Put A or O on it, and you're good to go. Like Hola. So your name would be Redzo Rhetorico.
I don't know, something like that. I figured it would work. I don't know, some. I was on my third attempt of Rosetta Stone Spanish and I failed miserably. And I was like, okay, let's do Rosetta Stone Spanish. And the first thing they said was bonjour, and I was like, crazy fucking gibberish. I don't understand it. So yeah,
Bonjour's
I'm failing
French.
miserably.
Why are they teaching you French in a Spanish Rosetta course?
You know,
That's I think they're
maybe
confused.
maybe they mislabeled it.
Yeah.
We're not sure. You know what? I'm still trying to figure that out. I'll get back to you on
Yeah,
that,
your Spanish is really bad if you think bonjour is Spanish. That's really bad
dude.
Spanish.
Dude, I'm not a linguist by any stretch of the human imagination. I know how to speak asshole. Does that count as a
Yeah, that's
language?
a fluent language that flat earthers speak that you do speak very well. Yeah, somebody in the live chat said the term should be hyphenated. Well, here's the thing like flat earther, I mean, it could be a hyphenated word, right? Because flat earther isn't one big word. And, you
I
know,
mean, like I said, there is no right or wrong answer for a totally made up word, I guess. I mean, eh.
I'm just wondering if there's any kind of codification for this all. That's all. I mean, you're the expert on flat Earth, so it hasn't been codified yet. Then maybe you can prescriptively tell us how it should be, and then we can just all go with that. I'd capitalize Earther because I capitalize Earth, right? Because it's a proper name for a planet.
I
So
mean,
I just think
my
it's a derivation of the proper name. So I capitalize it, but
but I don't make rules when it comes to flat earthers. I just debunk their sorry shit with the rules of the universe. I mean,
you can make the rule
I,
on this one. I mean, do you want me to make the rule? I don't care. I capitalize it. So if you want to follow that convention, go for it.
there are rules when dealing with flat earthers. Personally, my rule is that you treat them all like garbage until they actually start being somewhat intellectually honest. But yeah, that's quite an uphill battle. Kind of like pulling teeth, but with no anesthetic and using nothing but a rubber band and chewing gum.
So you under the impression or guise that the way we should approach certain things. I'm not against mockery in some cases, right? I'm not against mockery where there's demonstrable evidence against. For example, younger creations, the flat Earth. Those are just demonstrable, right? I mean, you have to be either A, completely scientifically illiterate, B, morally incompetent, because I think that you have ethical considerations when you start putting forth a narrative that you know is not true with these people that are opposed, people that are just completely dishonest. And I have yet to really meet a honest flat earther, at least intellectually speaking. I don't know if that's even possible. But do
No,
you subscribe to mockery is in this case um, a good way to go about discrediting them? And I'm because I think that it is, and I'm going to really stipulate this. I don't think it is for things like religion per se, and especially like the God claim, because those are not something that we can actually say, hey, look, there is no God or there's a God. But we can say, hey, look, here the Earth isn't flat. So I think mocking them helps other people because one, most people don't want to look like they're stupid, right? I mean, certain people can't help themselves, and flat earthers especially. But I think it makes them pause at least. And the people onlooking, they don't want to be stupid, so they're going to go. I don't want to. I don't want to hear this guy and sound like him. I don't want to be dumb like him. So I think there's maybe something to it because you're not going to get through with them with actual evidence and logic and reason and science and maths because you've been doing this a very long time, and you know as well as I do. There's certain people that you're not going to get through that way, right?
Yeah. Well, it really does depend on the type of person that you're speaking of, and I know what you're saying. I have yet to speak to an honest flat earther, but the thing is that there are a few flat earthers out there that are somewhat kind of maybe respectable. So if they treat you with a little bit of respect, then I guess you can treat them with a little bit of respect in return. But they are very few, far between, almost non-existent when you're dealing with the flat earther camp. Most of the flat earther camp is very dishonest. And not only are they are dishonest to your face. And in which case, okay, well, if you want to treat me like that, if you want to go ahead and talk to me like that, well, not only can I throw it back at you, I can throw it back at you twice as hard and also have science, math, just all the evidence on my side. So basically, you end up, I guess, having a dick measuring contest, but you know before you even begin the competition that your dick is massive compared to their, I don't know, raisin.
No,
So
I like the way you put that actually, because I live by that model. People that have known me really well, I don't even have to even say it, but people that know me really well know that I give what I get, right? If you approach me in a very either professional or just very inquisitive way, I'm going to go out of my way to help you understand it as long as it takes. I mean, I've spent hours on air, off air, in private conversation, DMs, private messages, helping people understand certain concepts. I have no problem with that. That's why a lot of people will send messages in public and privately thanking me for spending time helping them to understand concepts they probably normally wouldn't have understood. However, you come at me sideways, I'm going to treat you, with a little bit less respect. I'm going to give what I get. If you start dissing on me, you're probably going to get dissed back. It's just an equal opposite reaction. Newton's third law,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Is that how you do it?
It goes like that. Like, for example, if you're talking to somebody who's coming at you sideways, you'll respond by coming at them sideways, especially if they're the ones that decide to hit below the belt first. It's like, oh, so that's how you want this to be. Okay, well, if you wanted this to be a dumpster fire, well, congratulations, sir. You now have a dumpster fire. But if they come at you with, like, let's say you're talking to a flat earther who is not, I should say, they're not invested in the earth being flat. They have no actual dog in this race or horse in this race, whatever the fucking metaphor is. But they are genuinely curious about how things work in our model. At that point, you can tone down the assholiness and you can answer them in a nice, respectful way, and also give them resources where they can kind of expand on that, and maybe they will learn more from it. But for other people who have no interest in learning about the truth, like, for example, Jaronism, Bob from Glowbusters, Nathan Thompson, and so on, these are the individuals where mockery is the only solution. Because if their audience sees them being just pwned this badly, that might get them to lose their support. Because, like, Nathan, you were supposed to be my flat earth idol. You're supposed to be my mentor. And here you are getting your ass royally handed to you by some no-name fuckboy from Florida who is a plumber, who's ugly as hell. I mean, what the hell, dude? It kind of shoots down their credibility. And that's what you want to give. You want to make sure that flat earth has a stigma attached to it. Manufacture that stigma around it, and you be the source of it, that flat earth equals you being mocked in such a way in which there is no escape. You not only are you mocked, not only are you shown to be wrong, but you are shown to be wrong in such a way that in order to keep believing the crap that you believe, you have to be dishonest. So basically, you're killing 3 birds with 1 stone in there. I think it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. You definitely are a no-name fuck ugly boy from Florida, so
Oh, fuck yeah.
totally agree with that. But yeah, even your methodology I agree with. And here's the thing, I can tell the difference, and I think that you can tell the difference too. We had somebody in our community, Sean G, that I always got along with. Right, he was a nice kid, never got disrespectful, never got antagonistic, never came at me sideways. We spent a lot of time trying to explain to him certain things. We did on the Geek Room with Frank and Brandon, and you went on there and you helped him. He left Flat Earth because he recognized the fact that he was wrong. He was just not really informed on these things. He didn't understand the science. He didn't understand the math. He didn't understand the physics. But he had at least a wanting to, right? And so that kind of it makes a huge difference because people have left these things. Jamal Williams left Flat Earth. We have people leave Young Earth creationism, like Hunter Bailey and Wayne Fillmore. But like when it comes to like Nathan Oakley, correct me if I'm wrong. It's something like 72 days last time I checked, give or take, that you were supposed to have a discussion or debate with him on a neutral platform, which he agreed to. That never transpired. And then I'm going to get to super chats here in a second. I'm going to go do the super chats as they come in, so I don't forget. So I will get to your super chats here in just a second after Reds
Yeah.
discusses this whole thing with Nathan that he agreed to. What happened?
Well, Nathan Oakley agreed to have a debate with me, but I have to correct you on one thing. He didn't agree to have one on a neutral platform. He agreed to have one on his channel. The difference is that,
Oh, that's right. You're right.
or my thing about that, I should say, is that no, I'm not going to have a debate with someone who has a really bad track record of just turning off other people's mics, kicking them from the hangout whenever they decide to make a point. That's why I said, if we are going to have a debate, it is going to be on a neutral platform where you do not have your finger on the mute button. And so what he would do very often is that he would have his followers come to my channel and constantly post the same comment. Debate Nathan Oakley, debate Nathan Oakley, debate Nathan Oakley, so on, over. Why are you refusing to debate Nathan Oakley? And so finally I just said, all right, you know what? Fuck this. Fuck it. I'm done. I'm going to go ahead and make a clock dedicated to calling Nathan out, but on a neutral platform. So whenever I would get these comments from his fanboys, I would just do Control C, Control V, reply. There you go, and just keep doing that over and over and over and over again. And here's the thing: the comments stopped. Gee, I wonder why.
Yeah. No, I remember that. Yeah, he did. He would want to debate you on his channel, and I remember we were talking, and that was not going to happen because, of course, he's like a lot of dishonest people. They use mute and boots in order to moderate because they can't handle the narrative. We've seen this before. We've seen people. Reg and I, we definitely have known people in the community that used to do this on their channels. Matter of fact, there was a collection of them that used to do this on their channel. Guess what? Those people are no longer relevant. People stopped going into their hangouts, and I mean exponentially so. When people started realizing they're not going to be able to have a conversation, they're not going to be able to get their points out, they're not going to be able to show their evidence, and they get muted and booted, who wants to deal with that? Who wants to go into those types of atmospheres? And I can tell you right now, I can tell you, at least for a fact, 2 channels have died because of that. They're just not around. So, anyways, let's read the super chats real quick. Chad Eckerd, $2. Thank you, Chad, buddy. He says, Reds, how did you get into filming rocket launches? Because he was too ugly to be in front of the camera. He decided to be in back of the camera. True story.
That is true. That is actually part of the answer. Filming rocket launches actually started out because I was challenged to do so by a flat earther, and also because I got inspired by another user. I don't remember the name of the video, and I don't remember the name of the user. I'll have to find it, but it was in my favorites for a long time, and he filmed a Falcon 9 rocket taken off out of I believe it was Vandenberg Air Force Base. So he filmed this rocket going up, and he did such a fantastic job with that. I mean, he caught every aspect of this launch, including separation and second stage ignition, which I never seen that captured with just a regular handheld camera. I don't know if he was using a tripod or anything, but it was actually a really good video. And I thought to myself, what if I did that? What if I could do that and capture amazing videos like this? So not only could I be showing flat earthers that this stuff actually does happen, because many of them claim that it was CGI, but what if I could film stuff that's just as good as that? I would like to have that underneath my belt. So what I did was I started going out and filming rocket launches, and I would learn from my mistakes. So the first time I used a really shit tripod made of plastic and a camera that was actually a camcorder that I had just laying around. That was my first ever rocket launch video. Didn't turn out so well. Slowly started upgrading, and I found out that I really like going to these rocket launches. I like experiencing just science and engineering all coming together and making something that has just a lot of horsepower behind it. So as time went on and this became more of a regular hobby for me, I started investing in better tripods, better equipment, and eventually started branching out so that other people could help me out with it. Nowadays, you'll see me there with a Nikon P1000. I just bought a external monitor for it. And on the next launch, I'm actually going to be live streaming straight from the Nikon P1000. So that's going to be really, really awesome. That is the next big step when it comes to my rocket launch videos, is doing them live. So the way, to answer the question just bluntly, the way I got started in filming these rocket launches, because I got inspired to do so by another video on YouTube, and I was challenged by a flat earther to do so because they thought that all rocket launches were CGI. They did not believe that anyone could go out and see these launches for themselves. And I said, well, I'm going to keep demonstrating this to be false. And it just kept going over, 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 and over again. Next thing you know, I have a few rocket launches with thousands and some of them millions of views, and I'm very happy about that.
All right. Okay. Let's see. Kawasa. Red's voice sounds like Ryan Reynolds after inhaling a bit of helium. Even the initials match. My theory is RR secretly is Ryan Reynolds.
Some people have said that. I would like to say I sound like Reynolds after being hit in the nuts with a steel-toed poker, but whatever.
Yeah, no, you look more like what's his name, Deadpool, than Ryan Reynolds.
I see what you did there.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. Ozzie Globehead, 50 Australian. Thank you, Ozzie Globehead. He says Reds Showbot can improve your ugliness.
Oh boy, you wouldn't be the first one that tried. All of them have failed though.
Yeah. And we got Taylor in here. Taylor, I guess, wanted to ask a question. So Taylor, we're gonna just cycle people in and out. So come on in, ask a question, then we're gonna, because it's not as too hard to see on the screen. So, what's your question for Reds, Taylor?
I'm going to ask him, do you believe that we went to the moon?
Of course, yes.
Based on what evidence?
Based on the fact that we actually went to the moon. Because if you look at the laser rangefinders, they're actually utilizing an experiment that's still going on to this day. There's a thing called corner reflectors, and they left a plate of corner reflectors on the surface of the moon. And if you shine a laser at these corner reflectors will reflect that laser back to their source, to their origin point. And based on the speed of light and the time it takes for it to go back and forth, you will actually know the distance between the point that's shooting the laser and the moon. And from that, we're able to get very precise measurements. And that's why we know the moon is receding by, what is it, like 3 centimeters per year or something like that. Yeah. We also have the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, which has been able to photograph each of these landing sites in exquisite detail. Another thing that you would have is just the economies of scale of what it would take to actually fix something like this. And you would not only need the Americans to be in on it, thousands of Americans to be in on it, but you would have to have the entire world in on it, and even America's enemies at the time, including the Russians, which we were having one hell of a dick measuring contest with. And at the time, we were losing badly. We were losing that dick measuring contest to the Russians. And so the Russians had every tool, equipment to blow the lid on this thing, because they could intercept our signals, and in fact they did. That's why they were able to independently confirm that yes, American astronauts did launch, they did land on the moon, and there were transmissions from the moon. And also the main fact that a lot of people were there in the 1960s to see this big ass rocket take off and just basically shake the ground underneath it. A lot of things just come together. So you have what is a cumulative case for the Apollo program, as well as the launching of the Saturn V, and as well as the landing on the moon and the experiments that they left behind, which are still active to this day.
And I would also add there's really no negative evidence against the hypothesis that we went to the moon. Every conspiratorial evidence that I've ever seen is just that, is conspiratorial. It's not based on science. It's not based on facts. It's not based on anything any rational person would look at and go, yeah, this didn't happen. I was born the year after the moon landing. I was born in 1970. This took place in 1969. My parents were alive to watch it, when it happened, kind of thing. So it was something that was talked about in my generation quite a lot. There was just no possible way that many people were talking about something that didn't happen, based on the fact that hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people were involved in these things. Matter of fact, you can go back and look at the archives and see the code that was written for the Apollo missions, and it was stacked. It was like literally from floor to ceiling written of code. Nobody's going to make all that stuff up, because it actually worked. The code actually works. You can actually, in theory, utilize the code now with some kind of system, but it's just too many moving parts for it to be fabricated. It would have been easier just to go than to have a massive global conspiracy that the Russians wouldn't have gone, oh, hey, you know what, we're going to be on this too. By the way, they weren't our friends. They're pretty much still not our friends. They would have exposed us. And so there's just overwhelming evidence for it and zero evidence against it. So what's the best course of action is to believe rationally that we went.
So my question, did they leave? They went to the moon and they left corner reflectors there so they could prove the moon?
No.
What did they do that for?
No, the corner reflectors were to measure the distance to the moon and to see the difference in distance over time. And that's why we're getting the values that we're getting today of -3 centimeters per year. So,
because I'm not a flat earther. I don't think it's logical to be a flat earther, because I can see a round moon, right?
Yeah.
And I believe I can see curvature too. I'm pretty sure. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, so I can pretty much see. I drive over Highway 37. I can kind of see the curve. And being in low Earth orbit, right, isn't that big a deal. But that's where we've been since this Apollo program, even though we got space shuttles and stuff flying in and out. And having a corner reflector on the moon, but we don't have footage of Neil Armstrong or Buzz Aldrin dropping it off there. So I just believe that it's there because someone put it there.
We actually do have images that were there. If I actually could screen share on this piece of crap program, I would show you. But yeah, you actually see them setting up the corner reflectors and aiming it in its position where the corner reflectors are going to be using. I was also correct in live chat that they're called retro reflectors, but they work by corner reflectors. It's the same concept, just different name. But these retro reflectors, you don't actually have to take my word for it. There are plenty of observatories that actually have an open house when they're utilizing the reflectors. You could go there yourself and watch them perform the observation and see the data points that they collect from it.
Because every time I ask why we haven't gone to the moon since, even though we're like light years, like literal light years ahead of where we were when they launched.
We're going back. China's going. We're going back. Matter of fact, Mike Pence just ordered NASA to go back by 2024.
So we're gonna go back to the moon.
Yeah.
And we're going to see, there's going to be astronauts on the moon going, hey guys,
they want to use
it. Facebook Live.
There was a lot of talk to make the moon as some kind of like launching point to, the further regions. And of course, there's a lot that goes into that, and it's not really practical at this point in our technology, but they want to get some preliminary things out of the way. So they want to at least have a moon foothold. I wouldn't necessarily say a moon base, but they want to be able to have a foothold in it, because eventually we do have to colonize the moon. We definitely have to colonize other places. The moon is the first best place to test our things out, because it's a lot closer, right? So we are going to go back. There's no question about that. It's just a matter of when and what we can gain out of it. And plus, I think now that they've found, that there's a surplus of helium-3 up there, they might be able to use that as well. Do you know much about that, Reds? The mining of helium-3?
Yeah, there is a surplus of materials, but I do want to answer the other question: why didn't we go back? The very short answer is money. Every time that you go to the moon, there has to be some sort of benefit from going to the moon. That's the only way the government is going to approve such a big spending budget for NASA. And if they do not produce results, then what are they spending their money for? By going to the moon multiple times as they did, they got all they could out of it with what they had available, even going so far as to actually get a moon buggy there that was pulled into the side of the limb. So when you look at how many times they've gone there, what they could have done with the information that they got from the moon. There was actually no point in going back, lest it was to just burn money. NASA could have been spending that money doing other things, getting more information out with unmanned missions to other planets, the outer solar system, so on and so forth. And that's where you got, like, for example, Cassini, Curiosity, the Voyager crafts, Spirit, Opportunity. These unmanned crafts actually produce more science than what we could possibly get by going back to the moon again. And the only reason that we're going back to the moon is not for scientific reasons. It's literally just a stopping ground so that we can launch ourselves to other worlds to get even more out of our solar system, because we've been to the moon. We know what's there. We know what it's all about. We pretty much figured it out. There's a few unanswered questions, but none that's really pressing as what we have yet to discover outside of the Earth-Moon system. For example, we need to go back to Jupiter's moons. We need to have another Cassini craft. I would prefer to send something out back to Pluto, but this time put it in orbit so we can map the entire planet. Let's go ahead and look at the moons of Neptune. Let's go ahead and head back to Ceres, or check out all the other asteroids like Bennu or Hayabusa. There's plenty of other questions out there in the solar system besides our moon. So there really is no benefit of the moon except for the fact that it's lower gravity, which makes it a perfect point to launch to other places in the solar system.
Yeah, our moon's boring for all practical purposes. Now they're just now finding out there is some seismic activity on there, and of course, like Red said, a manned probe is more informative than a manned probe in many different ways. But we can send a lot less expensive probes and find out much more scientific evidence. We can find out soils. We can, what is made out of. We can find out if there's any bacteria. We can find out by detecting, methane emissions and other emissions we expect from metabolism functions for various types of organisms. If xenobiology is similar to our own, right, we'd expect there to be certain metabolites to be produced, but what's the point of going back to the moon unless we have a reason to, right? So we are coming up with reasons to go back to the moon, only because, as Red said, to use it to maybe go to other places. But it's also a pride of honor, right? I mean, China wants to go there because it's something to be prideful. Now they just sent some probes there, and their probes crashed. Was it China, or who sent the probe there just recently? And they got
Israel.
And you can actually see the scar. You can see where it landed. It's a real, moon is a real thing, right? And so the flat earthers that say the moon is inside our atmosphere, the moon is a hologram, these are all just whack job conspiracy theories. And again, it goes back to what I originally said. There's no negative evidence against the hypothesis that we haven't been to the moon. So
I'll believe it if they go back in 2024. If they go back in 2024, I'll change my mind about this. Because I don't want epistemic responsibility for this, but my belief, right, is different than Tobin's. I believe that the flat earthers or NASA going, hey, we can't cover this shit up any longer. We're watching all these space movies and stuff, and they're starting to figure it out. Because I think it's coincidence.
Who's figuring it out? There's nothing to figure out. There's 280 countries, something like that, right? I mean, we're not the only sovereign country on the planet. If there was something wonky going on, these countries are not going to be spending millions and billions of dollars to get to the moon and other places like they are. I mean, they're sending probes just like we are. They're exploring the solar system just like we are.
They can't get there though and say, "Hey, we weren't there," because they can't leave low Earth orbit. Nobody has.
Well, no, that's your. But see, that's your assumption that everybody in the world that knows anything about this topic will disagree with you on, because they've worked on these projects. Reds has seen these launches. He knows from personal experience you're wrong. There's no way you could convince him otherwise, beyond an immeasurable amount of infinite amount of evidence that would be basically wires putting to his brain and directly, giving him hallucinations or something. You're fundamentally wrong. I mean, there's just no other way of putting it to you. You're fundamentally wrong.
What I just said, somebody left low Earth orbit since the Apollo missions.
No, you said that we have never gone past.
You said we've never gone past.
Well, yeah, I don't believe we ever have, but as right now, as it's accepted as fact, is NASA that nobody's left low Earth orbit since the Apollo
Yeah, no one's
Human-wise,
left
yeah.
low Earth. No one has left
No human
low
has.
Earth orbit since the Apollo programs. But keep in mind that other spacecrafts have, and
Right.
that can be easily demonstrated. So if other spacecrafts can make it past low Earth orbit, what makes you think that a human-rated craft couldn't?
Right.
Oh, because probably the extreme temperatures. There's all kinds of factors.
Like what? Like where's this extreme temperatures from?
In space, outside of Earth's orbit.
Where?
There's still. What's the moon? What's the temperature on the moon? Like negative 6,000 Celsius?
No.
Negative 6,000.
Something like that.
No. No.
Hey Steve, a quick question. What is absolute zero?
213 degrees Celsius negative and 432.16 Fahrenheit, if I remember.
So apparently the temperature of space is that which is below absolute zero by thousands.
Yeah, like
What would my chances? Can I get on the moon with like a ski jacket? Or
it's negative 273.15 for Celsius and 459.67 for Fahrenheit. So I was in the ballpark.
What about the sun shining? Like, do you have any protection from the sun?
Yeah, the craft that you're in usually helps.
Yeah, but
because keep in mind
What's a high and low on the moon?
It's 0 Kelvin. Yeah, by the way.
Yeah, 0 Kelvin is absolute zero. Yes,
which is minus 273.15 or whatever it is. Yeah.
Google usually helps out a lot with stuff like this. Just saying.
Yeah, but minus 6,000 Celsius, you're like.
Yeah. I don't know, but it's. I'm pretty sure it's cold.
There's a big difference between minus 273.15 and minus 6,000.
I'm hyper.
Your magnitude off.
I'm pretty sure it's pretty cold up there. So you have the spacesuit to protect you, and it's definitely what's low Earth orbit.
But you understand that you could be insulated. Do you know how a thermos can works? It keeps cold in and heat out. There's no heat transfer because you have no transfer of energy across the insulating layer. So you could have a differential in temperature quite extensive because you have what's called Newton cooling. And Newton cooling will be the amount of cooling between different subsets of an isolation barrier between a temperature of higher concentration of thermal energy and lower concentration of thermal energy. You can have space here at minus 273.15. You could be a nice, comfortable 70 degrees in here with just a few inches difference because that's how heat transfer works. It doesn't go across as efficiently through certain types of material. That's your transfer coefficient.
Mm-hmm. So,
and I took science.
And also,
I science, bro. Do you even science, bro? Sorry.
So 260 Fahrenheit, and then the low is minus 173 Celsius.
Minus 173.
So reasonably, there could be a spacesuit out there that could do that.
Yeah, there is, and there has been. I mean, just look at the International Space Station.
But couldn't we do something? We can demonstrate here on Earth that somebody can get in a spacesuit at 270 degrees Fahrenheit, 278 degrees Fahrenheit.
Minus. These are minus, not above.
That's the high. That's when the sun, you get a 270 high, and then less, 173 low.
Well, in certain areas, sure. I guess you have higher temperatures, but a lot of the flat earthers run this whole narrative that because the thermosphere can get up to about 3,000 degrees Celsius, that no spacecraft can exist there, right? But they don't understand that you're at a vacuum. Your density is extremely low. So you have all temperature is basically as a function of kinetic energy across the system. So if you have only a few molecules moving at that kinetic energy, then you have very, very low transfer of heat. You have very, very low transfer of energy. It's like sticking your head in a conventional oven for a short period of time is not going to do as much harm as if you're sticking your hand in boiling water at half the temperature because the water's much denser. You're going to have a much greater transfer of energy. So just because it's 3,000 degrees doesn't mean anything because it's that vacuum. It's still going to be cold. Just you're going to have some molecules going around very fast. Right, Reds?
Yep, correct. And also, spacecrafts have very good thermal management. You may notice on the International Space Station these panels sticking out on the side. Not the solar panels. The panels that are always facing away from the sun. Those are radiators, and they're there for a reason. So there is thermal management on spacecrafts, just like there's thermal management within spacesuits. Actually, there's a really good article on NASA's own website where you can read up on what type of thermal system that they have. They have liquid cooling that can be cooled, heated, whatever the case may be. to handle these types of environments and to keep the astronauts inside in a nice, comfortable, climate-controlled environment with enough air pressure to not, die, which would be preferable.
Yeah, everything you say, Taylor, is basically anybody in physics or science or these subjects is going to be able to explain it. It's just that for some reason you don't want to believe it because you have always put the narrative that the Bible is your book of choice, and that anything that goes against it seems to
That's
be.
just my young Earth belief.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
the moon could be fine. I'll be totally fine with the moon in 2024. We'll watch it together. Then the moon will be proven to me for good. I won't have any speculation.
But can you agree though? If you're very 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 wrong about that, you could be very 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 wrong about young Earth creationism, which you are.
I've always.
No, you said before you can't be wrong on young Earth creationism. You kind of said no, the Bible can't be wrong. I've heard you say that once.
But if the Bible ends up being wrong, then I can't be a young Earth creationist anymore. That's my position. I can't just keep being something that's false.
But can the Bible be wrong?
The Bible's definitely not a science book, so just.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because there's the things that arguments. Well, the Bible says the insects have 4 legs.
Yeah, they get a few things wrong. Birds and bats.
It's making a scientific claim that insects have 4 legs. It's saying you will not eat the insects with 4 legs. You can eat the locusts.
Well, that's a classification thing, though. I don't really take that as a huge issue because that's a classification thing. But
our science butt heads when we talk about it.
But it's not a place to go to learn science. No, you're never going to get. No scientist has ever learned anything about science by going to the Bible.
Well, I'll tell you this. If you have any more questions that are revolving around the type of rhetoric that flat earthers usually go on about, just hit me back on my channel. But I want to go ahead and just stop ignoring the other people.
All right, so we're going to ask some more questions here. Taylor, thanks a lot for joining us. I'm going to put you back in the waiting room here. So thanks, buddy. All right. Let's see. Somebody had asked. Jared had asked, why is Red such an asshole? We've already been over that, Jared. But then he asked.
I'm on my period.
Yeah, that is all month long. He says, can we ask him why does God lie? That was actually to Taylor, but Taylor left. Sorry. And by the way, I don't think lying is a big deal. If there's purposes for it, I mean, you can actually make a narrative that God can lie, and that's not exactly immoral or unethical. So, I don't really have a problem with the narrative that God can lie if he does so for some kind of beneficial reason, because there are such things as virtuous lies. I mean, if Reds asked me, hey, Steve, do you really think I'm ugly? I'm not going to lie to him and say, no, I really think you're a good-looking guy. I'm going to tell him straight up, dude, you are ugly as fuck. I wouldn't touch you with cherry. But there are times where you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, right? So I think there's some virtuous thing. I don't think lying itself is immoral. Now, if you're a Kantian ethicist, then Kant is obviously going to disagree with that, right? Kant's argument is that we should never lie at any time, right? That was a categorical imperative that lying was always wrong.
Lying was always wrong. So basically, if we wind the clocks back to the 1940s and I'm hiding Jews underneath my floorboards and the Nazis at my door ask me, are you hiding any Jews here? Is lying immoral in that case?
Yeah, he would actually argue it would be, and his reasoning for it was that you could tell somebody at the door that you had no Jews, and what would happen if the Jews were in the house, saw that the people were at the door, and they decided to go out the back door and start making a run for it, in which case they would get shot and killed. Now, if they decided to run for it and you had told the truth, they would have came in, found nobody, and given the time for the Jews to leave. That was the counter argument that Hume would have used. So.
Mm-hmm. Don't exactly accept it, but
yeah, no, I'm with you, bro. I'm not a Kantian ethics person. I think that's not the way to go. I think there are certain times where lying is a higher moral good than not lying. But there has to be reasons for it, right? There has to be a moral good to be had. Like, for example, if I said, "Hey, Reds, I want to take you out for the movies or something like that," and you say, "Hey, I need to go back to my house," and I give you some bullshit reason why you can't go back, but the reason is because we're having a surprise birthday party for you, right? Yeah, I lied to you, but there's a higher good to be had there, right? Because I didn't want to spoil the event for you. So, all right, what other questions we got for Reds? By the way, 200 people watching, Reds.
Oh, wow. Nice. Thanks for having such low standards, everyone.
Right? I don't know if that's because low standards for coming to this channel or low standards like listening to you. But either way, All right, what do we got for Reds here? You want to come on in? The link is in the video description. It's also on the video tab there. Meeting ID is 738-254-223. You can join via Zoom. Please don't call in because your number will be shown, so avoid that. Of course, I didn't put... Well, yeah, I guess you could figure out to call in, but last time somebody did that, I had to spend time blurring it out because they didn't read the thing on the bottom saying your number will be shown. So, what else do we got here? Let me look through here. Most of them is for Taylor. Taylor is a more popular guest than you, Reds. That's why they're here. Oh,
I see.
You got a young Earth creationist. Yeah, Taylor really believes that stuff, and I've been working with him. Don't get me wrong, and he's come a little bit of progress, but at least he's willing to have a dialogue, right? See how he doesn't come after you sideways? See how he's actually willing to have a conversation? Those are the people that I love having conversations with. People say, well, why do you talk to certain people? Well, I don't care that they disagree. I want to know if they can have a conversation. If I stopped talking to everybody who disagreed with me, man, I'd be sitting by myself all the time, twiddling my fingers. Nobody wants to have people that disagree, but we'd rather have people agree with us. That's why we argue. But if they do, then we have the argument. That's what arguments do. They're there to have discussions. And I just got recently shut down like by PZ Myers, right? PZ Myers, I've always got along with, right? Until the last couple months while the social justice narrative started coming down. And he started saying some things, and I questioned him. I just asked him questions. It wasn't impolite, wasn't rude. I've always been respectful to him. He blocked me. And I'm like, this is the regressive narrative that I'm seeing, that if somebody's not agreeing with you or saying something that is against your particular position, their first course of action as a regressive is to block people. I find that to be the worst type of way of having a discussion possible. Because at that point, you're no longer in the realm of adult conversations. You're no longer willing to have a dialectic. You're authoritative, you're ideologue, and I just don't think that is conducive to any type of real civil discourse. Now, there are times to block people, don't get me wrong, but just because they disagree with you is certainly not one of them, I don't think. Reds?
Yeah, let's see. All right, so I'm looking at the live chat right now. There's one guy by the name of Platonic that's asking, how can we have atmosphere next to a vacuum? Do I have to explain again that vacuums don't suck? Vacuum is not a force.
Why do you have to keep explaining that? I don't understand how people can ask the same question so many times when the answer has been explained ad nauseum. Yeah, vacuums don't suck. They're a low pressure area. Higher pressure goes to lower pressure. It's not that this is sucking. It's this is pushing. It's expanding out more. It's has more pressure here. This is less pressure. Higher pressure, lower pressure. When you have like a water tower at the top of a mountain and you have a water tower at the bottom, which way it's going to flow? It's not that this down here is sucking. It's not that it's like having a vacuum pressure. It's just this is higher pressure. That's the direction of flow.
Yeah, here's basically what it is. You have two things. You have a vacuum, which is a non-force, competing with gravity, which can be looked at as a force if we're talking Newtonian here, which for the sake of this conversation, I'm going to. So you have a non-force competing with a force. Who's going to win at that? Oh, yeah, gravity. So the atmosphere is going to naturally go towards the gravitational body, which is, I don't know, the Earth, and stick to it. But what about evidence of this? Well, in 2015, I recorded a rocket launch of an Atlas V 551. And this launch was very special because this did a transfer into the sun's rays before the sun actually came up. So as the rocket got higher and higher and higher in altitude, it eventually became illuminated by the sun. The gases actually started to glow in the sunlight while it was still dark outside. And what we saw was the following. And this video is on my channel. If you go to YouTube right now and look up how soys launch, you will be able to see this Atlas V 551 launch uploaded on my channel. As the rocket got higher and higher and higher, the gases that were being expelled from the rocket started expanding more and more and more because of less atmospheric pressure as it was going up. Eventually, the rocket got so high up in altitude that the gases spread a lot to the point where you couldn't even see the gases anymore. They were spreading out too thin. So we actually saw the rocket actually going into vacuum. If there is no container separating the differences in pressures as you're getting higher in altitude, then there doesn't need to be a container to separating sea level to way past the Kármán line where the International Space Station is.
Yeah.
There's no container is needed in one aspect, so that same thing that's going on, no container is needed in the other aspect as well.
This
we have
narrative,
evidence to show this.
Yeah, the narrative you need a container is fundamentally wrong in physics. Anybody who says you need a container you're absolutely wrong. The reason being is pretty simple. One, we can demonstrate that you can have pressure without a container. Look at the oceans. Go down a couple miles deep, you're going to be crushed like a grape, and there's no container for the ocean. So if you take the same thing and instead of having that being liquid, have that be a gas, right? And by the way, both gases and liquids flow, right? So these are things that can be compressed. It could be, and water doesn't compress very easily, but gas compresses pretty decently. But when you have a gravitational force that's binding this gas to it, right? It's because it's basically you have a gravitational force, you have a gas around it. What's going to happen? It's going to attract it. So that gas is going to be heavier at the bottom, lighter at the top, but it doesn't need a container. You have air pressure, 14.7 psi, is because of the density of air at sea level, because you have a column of air above you. There's a pressure to be had there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You literally have a pressure on you right now at 14.7 psi on every square inch of your body because of this atmospheric column that's above you.
Yeah. So to answer, he goes, please explain why the gas wouldn't fill the space. Well, the answer is quite simple, because again, space being a vacuum is not a force. Gravity is. So gravity is going to win in that fight. You're literally comparing a force against a non-force. You're comparing a guy who's actually going to fight to a guy that's going to do absolutely fuck all. So gravity is going to win in that case. So that means that gravity, being the force that is dominant in that equation, is going to win out when it comes to the atmosphere. Atmosphere is then going to be forced to cling to the gravitationally dominant body, and then you can have that right next to a vacuum and have no problem whatsoever. And to demonstrate that you don't actually need any sort of container, basically take an empty glass bottle, stretch an empty balloon over it, and drive up a mountain. Notice as you get higher and higher and higher, like do this next time anyone goes to Pikes Peak or something like that, you will see the balloon actually start to fill as you're driving up the mountain. And question, did you have to drive through a container on your way up? Oh, you didn't? Well, guess what? Then I guess you don't need a container after all.
Same principle. If you take a balloon and you fill it up at a higher altitude and you go down, it's going to get smaller, just like you would if you drop a balloon in the ocean. It's going to get smaller. These are just the facts. I mean, this is the same thing that you saw with your space rocket videos, because you'll see that the gas expand more because of less pressure on the outside. This is to be expected. So these people running this stupid narrative that you need a container, I think are either just absolutely incompetent, or they're just trolling. They're just lying, because, or a combination. You could be both, I guess. But it has to be some form of those things, because anybody who takes first year physics is going to be able to explain this type of concept to somebody. It has nothing to do with being a container.
Yep, and also I have to also give a challenge. Try to explain atmospheric pressure without gravity. Give me the equation for it, because there's something very key in that equation, and it's gravity. Yeah. So you're going to have to try and explain it and make predictions from it without actually including gravity. All I got to say is good luck with that.
Yeah, if you look at Bernoulli's equation, you have kinetic energy and potential energy. The kinetic energy is going to be 1/2, mv squared, but the potential energy is actually based upon your height, your density, and the fact that you have a gravitational force. And so without gravity, you have no potential energy. You stick a ball on a cliff and you drop it off. Why does it fall? It falls because there's something called gravity. That is the reason why there's a potential energy to be had there, because you're in a different differential between two states of potential energy. That is due to the difference in gravity between what's at the surface of the Earth and at that the top of the cliff there. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sorry to say, but flat earthers, they just don't bother to understand very basic concepts, and so they ask the same questions over and over again, get the same answers, and they go, "Oh, look, you can't answer."
Well, not only that, not only do they not want to accept the answer, they don't even have to understand the answer to see an example of this happening. Like I said, I got not one but 2 rocket launches that demonstrate this, because they were going into the sun and having their gases illuminated. You literally see the effect of a drop, a very severe drop in atmospheric pressure as altitude is getting to the point where the gases spread so wide that they are pretty much in vacuum. This is exactly what a lot of flat earthers are fighting against, and yet there is demonstrable evidence that shows this. And the best part about it is I'm not the only one that filmed it. Many people have. So
They're all in on it, right?
If they actually went and saw one.
They're all shills.
Of course,
whatever happened to?
We're all shills.
You had invited Russian vids to go down to a rocket launch. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. You actually tweeted out that you didn't see him down there, correct?
Correct. I did not see him.
Yeah.
Go figure.
Shocking. Yeah. I don't think they really even care to find out the truth one of these days. I don't think they care one way or another, because this is their narrative. This is their whole shtick, right? What would they be without this flat Earth narrative? Do you think Nathan Oakley would ever have a presence on the internet if it wasn't running some bullshit? I think it's a scam. But I mean, do you think he would? What is it about him that commands any kind of attention? What is it about him on the internet that anybody would ever bother to listen to?
I mean, I don't know. I think he's just trying to just get attention. I think he's a really big attention whore. So that could definitely be part of it. I think other people like Jism, they're just in it for the money.
Oh, Jism straight up just in it for the money. There's no question about it.
Just in it for the money.
He's a con man.
No amount of embarrassment will actually get him to stop. And other people like I don't know, like let's say Anthony Liley, they're just straight up delusional and dishonest. I guess they have built a little echo chamber and in their mind, and they don't ever want to leave it. They don't want to believe even for a second that the world isn't as scary as they're making it out to be, that there isn't this huge conspiracy, that actually questions like, air pressure next to a vacuum is actually quite easy once you do a little bit of studying, go out and watch some videos that actually demonstrate this to be facts. And like I have done, as many other people have done, and also with a simple challenge, try to predict, try to make any sort of rational model dealing with atmospheric pressure without the presence of gravity. I will wait a long fucking time. I've been waiting for 4 goddamn years, and not one person has been able to do it.
Yeah, and by the way, what happened to Russian Vid's friend? Wasn't his friend supposed to be down there?
I still don't know what's going on. I tweeted at him. Nothing came of it. Had a few guys try to look into it. Still don't know what's up. So as far as I know, nothing. I think if I was a betting man, I would bet that there was no friend. There was no trustworthy friend, and if there was,
shocking.
Even if there was this so-called trustworthy friend, that friend didn't go.
Well, first of all, what makes somebody a trustworthy? The guy's more paranoid than anybody ever met in my life. I don't think he can know what it's like to have a trusting friend.
Yeah, I don't know. I think what it is is that he basically made up this character to try and buy time and make an excuse as to him not actually going there and seeing it for himself. Because guess what? If he actually went there and saw it for himself, there would be no excuse, because his entire shtick when it comes to SpaceX is that they're faking their rocket launches and their landings. If he saw a launch and a landing for himself and he felt the sonic booms after the fact, he would basically be destroyed on the inside. I don't think he could mentally tolerate the fact that his entire worldview has been built on absolute bullshit.
He would need therapy, I'm sure. And by the way,
he would need therapy. Yeah, and he would also have to close his channel, because guess what? That's what the bet was.
Yeah. Look, I have low respect for Poes. If people are a Poe, they don't need to be around. I have much more respect for somebody who actually believes a position than just somebody who wants to come in and Poe. So the person who got timed out or blocked or removed, they can come in. The link is in the video description. You just go to the Zoom meeting ID. I'll put it even in the live chat, because I have control of who comes in and who comes out. And if he wants to demonstrate that he's not a Poe, I'll give him that opportunity. But if not, then yeah, let him stay hidden. I really have no problem with that, because you're not really hiding somebody of any consequence, and whoever wants to learn anything. And Poes, all they do is just, it calls issues. They don't have anything to add to the conversation. Ramhurt 88 $1.99. Thank you, buddy. Please break down the law of perspective formula. Well, there you go, you Mr. Arc 2 over arctan GMC squared PHQ, whatever.
Okay, the law of perspective is alpha equals 2 times the arctan of G over 2R. Alpha is the angular size of an object. G is the actual size of the object. And R is your distance to the object. So basically, we're trying to see what size an object will be in your vision. So if you have, like, let's say a car right in front of you, that car is going to occupy a certain amount of your vision. As the car gets further and further away from you, it's going to occupy less of your vision. That is known as its angular size. And if you were to draw this out, like on a piece of paper, have the car the same size, but draw it back, drawing lines from a common point to the bumper, to the bumpers of the vehicle, you will see that the angle starts to decrease. So it's occupying less of your field of view. That is the law of perspective. And the law of perspective can be used for things like blink tests, for example, like what I did when measuring the altitude of the International Space Station, because it's the same reason why parallax works. So if you have two observers, those can act like your two eyeballs and give you some depth perception. And when you apply numbers and actual measurements to it, you can get actual values from that. And it was from doing a blink test like that, and also utilizing perspective and utilizing parallax, that we were able to figure out the altitude of the International Space Station. So once again, the law of perspective states that as an object gets further away from you, it's going to shrink in size in your vision in totality. Now, what flat earthers seem to think that the law of perspective is that the object, as it gets further away from you, is going to eventually start disappearing bottom up and then eventually out of sight. That is not what the law of perspective states. The law of perspective does not say anywhere that it's going to disappear bottom up. Something external to law of perspective is at work there. And I don't know, it could possibly be the curvature of the Earth, as indicated by every single piece of evidence I've ever been able to gather out in the field. You know, since I have that thing called water all around me, that thing that always finds its level. So yeah, that kind of works. So yes, law of perspective, once again, alpha equals 2 times the arctan of G over 2R. Alpha is the angular size of an object. So for example, the moon is around 0.53 degrees wide. So take that for point of reference. So alpha is the angular size of the object. G is the actual size of the object, like what is its actual diameter. And then R would be the distance to the object. And if you know two of those, you can figure out the third.
And, I was actually really surprised that just because you were in Astronomy Live, we're like a mile away, that there was that much change in perspective from when the ISS crossed the actual moon.
Yeah,
that was really surprising, actually.
Yeah, what we did was we went and we asked ourselves, okay, if the International Space Station is this far away, how much parallax would we need to equal this amount, which had to be less than 0.53 degrees. And we actually found out that something a little over than a kilometer, or exactly a kilometer, would work. But then we also verified it by using transitfinder.com, where if you place your pin on the map, it will show you which part of the moon it actually goes over. So we use that tool to dictate where our independent sites would be.
You had to be exactly in that right geographical location. That had to be a pretty small geographical location to be in.
Yeah, it was in Venice, Florida. And when we were 1.11 kilometers apart, I saw the International Space Station go up the left side of the moon, and Astronomy Live saw it go up the right side of the moon. So I saw left, he saw right, and we were able to do a bit of pixel counting. Now, if we know that this many pixels equals 0.53 degrees, then we could simply build a ratio and then do a little bit of division and figure out what the angular sizes of the spread between the two tracks.
Yeah,
that gave us our parallax measurement. That is how we were able to determine the distance to the International Space Station, along with the help of Astronomy Live's telescope, which could tell us the angle at which it was looking at it.
Yeah, and people, we can tell people, I guess, that astronomy relies education. Is that okay?
Yeah. Well, I will say this.
He
I
knows
would
his
keep
math.
astronomy lives education under wraps, but
He knows his
um,
math.
astro- yeah, he's very good at math. He does have a PhD. A PhD
That's what I
is
wanted
like
to
none
know
of
if you
your
can say.
fucking business.
Yeah.
So
But he has an actual
he's
PhD, and he knows his math quite exceptionally well. So
yes, he has a PhD. He knows his math very
he's
well.
legit.
And so when we were doing the math side by side, we both came to the same exact answer.
Isn't that
So
great about
clearly,
math?
yeah, it's like you can actually use math to figure out the answer to questions that are definitely pressing. Like for example, is the International Space Station a plane? So we got the answer. No, no, it isn't, motherfuckers. And guess what? We were also able to confirm its speed from that observation. Its orbital velocity.
Yeah, I mean, can you what if your plane was at 30,000 feet? Could you estimate what kind of parallax you would have
I could,
having an angular
but
diameters of the moon? It would be quite substantial, I imagine.
it would be very substantial. In fact, at 30,000 feet, I imagine that the parallax would be so wide that you wouldn't be able to actually get a parallax measurement because the other observer would see it completely miss the fucking moon entirely.
Yeah, it would be quite a few angular diameters over. All
Yeah.
right, we got some other questions in here. Rodent asks, I have a question for Reds. Could Astronomy Live's telescope tracking software be able to track an airplane flying east toward the horizon? This would help debunk perspective.
Yes, the way that Astronomy Live's tracking software works is that it doesn't track objects, it tracks light. And so there actually has to be a light source with the object that's tracking. So this works for rockets because it has that bright glowing thing coming out of the ass end of the rocket. I don't think it would work for planes. I
Yeah.
don't think it would work for cars or anything like that. It only works with a light source. So it would work for, like, say, stars or planets or the International Space Station, because when you're seeing the International Space Station, it is reflecting off it's reflecting the light from the sun against a completely black background.
Yeah, you have
So
you
it's
have a really
very
good light point source for light. Yeah.
yeah, it's very easy for the telescope to grab onto that. There needs to be enough contrast between the light source and the background in order for it to track. So that's why when you see the rocket go up, you'll actually see the camera jitter around a bit. That's because he's taking manual control over it using joysticks.
Gotcha. Barney asks, trick question. Take into account perspective, standard atmospheric refraction, and atmospheric occlusion. What would be the horizon look like on a flat Earth?
What would the horizon look like on a flat Earth with standard refraction?
Yeah. I mean, if you
Well,
just
I'll
had an
tell
infinite plane, what would you look at? I mean, you would still see horizon. Um,
Well, the one thing is that if you were to be on a flat Earth, I know exactly what you would see given the observations that I have seen. You would be able to see all of Tampa Bay with the Nikon P1000 or even the P900 without any trouble whatsoever. You would be able to see MacDill Air Force Base from the north side of the Skyway Bridge. You would even be able to see the entirety of the Wells Fargo building in Tampa Bay. You would be able to see a perfectly level and straight and not bending at all Lake Pontchartrain Causeway Bridge. And you would also be able to see across the bay to from New Jersey to New York City without any sort of deviation on the very bottom of the buildings. So there's quite a lot of things that would be completely different when viewing things on a flat Earth. In fact, with good enough conditions and on certain days, if you are all the way across the Atlantic Ocean in Africa and you are looking towards New York City, you would actually be able to see the lights of New York City. You would, and here's the thing: because we have the law of perspective formula, we can actually figure out the angular size of the entire New York City skyline from that distance. And guess what? When you do the math, it turns out to be the same angular size of the moon with a 100x optical telescope. Guys, that is a child's telescope that you can buy on Amazon. So with the help of a 100x optical telescope, you can make the city skyline look as big as the moon does to the naked eye in your vision. Guess what we've never seen ever, no matter the atmospheric condition.
yeah, and I was going to say though, on certain conditions, like for example, if you're on the ocean or a desert or something like that, no matter if you have a flat plane, your eye is going to be able to only distinguish so much resolution, right? So if you have a city that's way, 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 way off in the distance, you would have to have a very strong telescope to see it. Your eye's not going to be able to resolve that. To me, I would think that the horizon would be looking almost exactly the same if you're on the ocean or if you're on a flat plain, a desert or something of that sort. Because again, you don't see an infinite distance. Now that's just me just spitballing there though.
If you were to have a Nikon P900, which is a very affordable camera nowadays, and there should be conditions available where you can see clear across the Atlantic Ocean, and unfortunately that never happens. And the reason why it never happens is because the Earth isn't flat.
You think the P900 could see across the Atlantic under? At least I mean, I would think if you just had a laser or something, but I don't think it would be. There's not enough light coming off of a source, even for a P900, when you're talking about 1,000 miles or something.
Well, it would be like this. Again, it depends on the condition. It depends on the clarity of the air of that day. But there should be, one day in the entire fucking year or whatever that you look out into the distance and you should be able to see this. And people are trying to break like world records for what is the longest photograph ever
400
taken.
And something. What was it from the top of a mountain? It was huge.
Yeah, at top of the mountain, something. I forget the actual distance, but this actually is a record
that was
that
like
people
400 miles. It was some ungodly
continuously
amount.
trying to break. Yeah. So when you look at the optics that is available for very cheap, there should be a endless amount of evidence to show people seeing further than we could ever see on a globe on a globe. But unfortunately, the Earth is a globe, not flat, so there is a limit how far you can see because the horizon becomes a thing at that point.
You sound so sad about that. Unfortunately, the Earth is, One more question. By the way, thank you for the PayPal, Tom. Thank you for Shorter's Pussy. Became a patron today. I've actually had a few new patrons lately. I've had a few patrons tell me they don't like some of the other channels that been what's been going on, and I've had a number of new Patreons in the last couple weeks, and I thank you for it. And in fact, what's funny is with all the drama and stuff, I haven't lost one. I'm very surprised for that, to be honest with you. But I think that my patrons and the people that frequent this channel, they get it. I think they understand these drama things, and I think they understand that this channel actually promotes actual dialogue, and I'd rather have the conversations than have the drama. Although it comes up every so often, right? Hey, we are a great debate community. What the hell can you have the great debate community without drama, right, Barney? I mean, they kind of go hand in hand some ways, right?
Well, you got to get the views somehow.
Right? I mean, it's all about the view, man. No. You know what? If it was all about the views, I'd have a lot more drama videos, and I avoid them. I mean, they happen every so often, but they don't get that many views. Man, in fact, it was probably my least watched. But they have to be addressed every so often. Reds and I think, both from experience, know that there's just certain things that need to be discussed and need to be talked about. If not, it'll just make matters worse, and I try to nip it in the bud, and I've done a very good job of doing that. So I do want to thank Shorter's Pussy for that. What a name, by the way, Schrodinger's. Whatever. Who am I to judge that she's a quantum state singularity pussy that is or is not closed? I don't know how that works. Negative exponents. Can you please explain the difference between scientific laws and theories for some of those in this group? Sure, I'm going to let Reds go first, then maybe Barney wants to take that one, then I will chime in on that.
Yeah, basically a scientific law is something that is established. Like, for example, Newton's laws of motion. I don't give a fuck who you are or how much weed you smoke, because here's the thing. Force equals mass times acceleration. Get your head out of your ass. All right. You could be as high as a fucking kite. That is never going to change. And believe me, you will feel it when you hit the floor with your face.
Yeah, gravity's a real thing. Jump off a bridge.
Gravity's a real thing. Exactly.
Yeah.
Gravity
You're not going to change that.
A real thing.
Yeah, you can call it anything you want. You can call it dropity. It's still going to hurt like a bitch.
It's still going to hurt.
You can argue what the causes of it are and what the real reasons or the physical reality behind it is. But the relationship that as you increase mass and as you increase the distance, it behaves in those proportions, that is a law.
Yep. So
That's why it's called the law of gravitation.
So you want to like briefly tell the difference between law and a theory then?
Yeah. So a theory in the scientific sense is a series of well substantiated facts that support something. Like, for example, gravity. There is a number of facts that go behind the theory of gravity. These are not, synonyms for guesses or we don't know or it could be this. No, it is by far the highest that you could possibly go, up the scientific chain. This is something that has been beaten down over and over and over and over again, and it has always survived. That is when when it becomes a scientific theory. And so basically the theory of gravity, germ theory, these things have been repeatedly confirmed over multiple observations, multiple experimentations, and I'm sure hundreds, if not thousands of papers. This is something that has a lot of backing behind it. So to basically disagree with it, you have to have something pretty fucking substantial. I'm just saying that right now.
Barney, what do you got?
So on the laws, here's how I think about it. You make a bunch of different observations. You correlate them into a huge data sheet. You say, this is where I've changed this variable. This is where I've changed this variable. This, and you look at their correlations. Laws are the things that don't change. And there are two types of laws. Things that really don't change. They stay fixed no matter what you do. And those are the conservation laws. The law of conservation of energy, the law of conservation of mass, of momentum, even Copernican laws, right? The area swept by a planet as it moves is always the same. Like over those time, regularities that you can see over time, right? Yeah. Those regularities that you see that they don't change, those get ascribed as laws. Another type of law is relational law. If I change this much, if I change this much, then this changes this much, right? The correlation between one thing, the independent variable, with the dependent variable. Those, again, they are constant. If you find that those things are mathematically related, then you have another law. That's the law of gravitation. Now, you can argue what the cause of that law is, what the explanation is, how does it come about, but you cannot really argue that when you take a thing and of this mass and put them at this distance and measure the force between them, that it's that force.
Right? I actually agree with all that. The relational laws would be like Boyle's law, Charles' law. We used to have to do something called qualitative analysis, where you would have like PV1 over T1 equals P2 V2 over T2. And basically it's just pressure, velocity, temperature in state 1, pressure, velocity, temperature in state 2. And as if you held something constant, let's say I have an adiabatic process, or I have something where it's isothermal or whatever you're changing. So if I want to hold the pressure constant, right, and I change the temperature, and the temperature goes up, what's going to happen to the volume, right? The volume is going to increase because it's higher temperatures, right? If I have something where if decrease, the volume is going to decrease. If I have if keeping the pressure the same. So I mean, there's a relationship to be had here. These are types of laws that if you do one thing, this is what's going to happen. Now, I do think there's certain laws that even the conservation laws might have loopholes. I think there might be some instances where they may not consistently hold. We've had parity violations. We've had I don't think it's lepton number, but there is one number that I think is questionable. I don't know if it's baron number or lepton number, but some of the conservation laws may not always hold in all situations. But that's okay. These are descriptive. They're not prescriptive. We're not saying, hey, this must be the case because we say so. We're saying we would observe this, therefore this must be the case, and we believe that these things hold until otherwise. Now, the difference between theories and laws and hypotheses, Reds is exactly right. A theory is a body of well-substantiated collection of facts that have been verified and repeatedly by experiment and repeatedly confirmed that have explanatory power and predictive ability. Hypotheses are something that we're testing, right? We want to see if our conjecture that is testable is the case, and of course, the law is basically something underneath the theory. So theories are a collection of everything. Now, the thing people need to take away from any of this, and they can go look this up. If you look at Jenny, I think it's Jenny Scott. She once said that that facts were the most useless things in science, and basically was her narrative. And she made a point. The reason being is facts are ubiquitous. It's facts. It's infinite number of facts. They really don't do much for us, right? Until you get a collection of those facts where you can actually use them to describe and explain and predict. That's what makes things interesting in science. That's why scientific theories are higher than facts. I know a lot of people in the skeptic community that think facts are the be all end all. Facts are number one. No, facts are the lowest in the hierarchy because there's just so many of them. And facts themselves don't explain anything. They're statements, right? They're non-explanatory. It is a fact that gravity exists. Okay, but what is that explaining, right?
Yeah. When you have a scientific theory, again, well-substantiated explanation, that has been repeatedly confirmed, but they're never going to use the word fact in that definition.
Yeah.
A scientific law is basically just an observation of some phenomenon that never changes. So you're going to have force equals mass times acceleration all the time, every time. I guess unless we go to a different universe.
Well, if something starts breaking down, if there might be something so extreme where these laws may break down, right? I mean, who knows what happens in a singularity? Somebody had mentioned
who knows what happens in a black hole? I could be completely turned inside out in a black hole. This is after spaghettification, of course, but
that won't happen on a supermassive one. You actually can survive that.
From where you're sitting right now, here's basically the whole thing. A scientific theory, or a theory in the scientific sense, is a well-substantiated explanation. And this well-substantiated explanation is based on observation, experimentation, and also the ability for it to fight back against every single attempt to dispose of it. Like, for example, the reason why we are so confident in Einstein's theories is because of they're a pain in the ass to replace. I mean, so it's like
quantum
people
loop gravity,
tried.
baby. Quantum loop gravity.
Yeah,
loop
people
quantum
have
gravity.
tried, and they're like, "Fuck, this is hard," and it shows its worth by fighting back, and that is why we call it well substantiated.
Real quick, two things. One, did I hear Bullinator's voice? I thought I heard Bullinator. I don't know where I heard him from. I'm hearing voices. Wow, that's weird. And second, somebody had mentioned
you did hear my voice, Steve.
Where am I hearing you from?
Discord.
Oh, I'm on Discord too at the same time here. Am I on Discord? I'm not on Discord, am I? You guys aren't hearing it. Bernie and Reds aren't hearing it. The outside's hearing this. Am I on Discord, David?
No, I can hear him from very far away, but.
Oh, am I in? No, I don't. Where am I? Where am I in Discord?
Bullinator, this was your one chance to fuck with them as a ghost, and you blew it.
Oh.
Great Debate Community Discord.
Okay, you know why? I might have been because I was hanging out with Cheshire and Dave McGinnis the other day on Discord. Maybe
I did fuck it up, Reds.
Yeah. Well, real quick, I was going to say, if you guys can hear Dave in the live the feed here, the Zoom thing. Somebody had mentioned the ideal gas law, which is kind of cool, actually. People may not know this about the ideal gas law, PVNRT, that is actually an idealized form. The ideal gas law is a useful fiction. It does not exist. It is not real. It is just an idealized fiction that's useful to us because there's no such thing as an ideal gas. So
yes, and pretty much every law that we know of has some constraints which point to the same thing. And that's why the whole philosophy of scientific instrumentalism was so kind of popular and popularized at one point.
I still tend to instrumentalism, but I got to tell you, I was talking to Alex Malpass off air the other day, and he made some really good arguments for scientific realism. And of course, Alex Malpass makes good arguments for everything, right? I mean, he could actually probably convince Reds that the Earth is flat if he tried hard enough. But he made some very good cases for scientific instrumentalism. Now, he thinks realism. He thinks instrumentalism falls into anti-realism. I don't know if I agree with him on that. I think that
I'm not sure either.
Yeah, I've seen it either way. I don't think it's full on anti-realism, but I don't think it's full on. I think it's more like quasi-realism. But
whoa, hang on. I just got to respond to something. It's absolutely horrific and wrong. It said Reds could be good looking in a black hole. Anything's possible. No, that is never possible.
That's not. There's something called logical impossibilities. There you go. That's one.
Yes, basically you're describing a square circle. No,
but he made the argument that scientific realism is such that it is at least the closest approximation to reality. It doesn't actually have to be reality. Now, I haven't read that before. Now, and so if that's the case, then of course I might tend to more scientific realism. But I'm still somewhere between scientific realism and scientific instrumentalism, and I think either one is fine. He didn't seem to like majorly go after me for being an instrumentalist. But he's definitely.
I always like bringing up the case for imprecise facts, right? 1 + 1 is a number between 0 and 100. Is a fact.
Yeah,
it's a very imprecise fact, but it's a fact. Mm-hmm. And science is kind of that. We don't know the exact answer, but we are constantly narrowing it down and throwing things away that cannot be the answer and narrowing it down closer and closer to the exact answer.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah.
There's always some level of impreciseness.
But I thought realism was actually saying that the theory was exactly the way reality is. He made the argument, no, it's not necessarily the case. It's that it is the more precise, as we know, that is corresponding to reality, which of course I tend to.
It describes reality. From my understanding, the difference between realism and instrumentalism is that instrumentalism kind of says, well, it doesn't matter what is real.
That's why
it matters what we can use.
Yeah,
and you can literally go and say that there is nothing real.
Yeah,
right. That it doesn't matter. We're just using the useful stuff. That's instrumentalism.
And that's why I tend to instrumentalism.
We can use it as an instrument, therefore it's useful.
And it's no wrong way. Here's one of those rare circumstances where in philosophy, I guess you find it a lot. But whether you're a realist or an instrumentalist, I don't think you can be wrong either way. There's no way to determine who's right or wrong. It's just a different perspective. I mean, Malpassable could be saying, "Hey, look, I think it's more useful to make it as realism, that it is the more likely the case and it's approximation to reality." The instrumentalist says, "You know what? That might be true, but who gives a shit as long as we can use it." I'm in that.
And you can be both, and those two things are not actually.
I think they're overlapping. I think there's room for overlapping there, and I would be tending to that than anti-realist. But yeah.
There is actually a point to why I joined this Zoom, because you were answering my question about what would the horizon look like, and it was a trick question, and I was sure you were going to get it right. There would be no horizon. There would be no visible horizon. So consider what refraction is, right? You have a column of air, which is dense at the bottom and rare at the top. Therefore, all light will curve through it away from the vertical as it's going up and towards the vertical as it's going down. So the more time you give it, the more distance you give it, it would be coming from a steeper and a steeper angle. You would just see everything rise indefinitely up until it was so far away that it blurred into the blue sky. And there would be no line. There would be no.
Well, wouldn't that still be a horizon, though? I mean, it's still a point of contact.
No, there would be no.
Oh, you're saying it's so blurred. You're saying it's so rarefied that it would be just what
First of all, it would be rising way above your eye level. You would be looking up at the very distant land.
Yeah, what you're referring to is something called an inferior mirage, and that's what it would do. Basically, instead of
you mean like a Morgana, Fatana,
the total internal reflection of a layer of denser air.
Yeah, right? So basically it'd be curving up type of deal.
Yeah.
But the way that I was defining horizon is just a limit to our sight. And so, yeah, you're right. It definitely was a trick question, and I have to say, fuck you, you got me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can see what he's saying. Don't get me wrong, but I still think there's like 4 different types of horizons, though. So it really kind of means, what do you mean by horizon? Technically, the horizon is the point of contact between the atmosphere and the landmass.
Yes, you would not have that.
So that's what you're saying you wouldn't have. Okay, I can get on board with that.
Also, question: Can I answer a question, or in this case, thing in the chat? The question was, if I was offered a one-way ticket to Mars, would I go? I would have said yes, but then I actually read the book, or at least played the audiobook of The Martian, and no, fuck that. I'm staying
Yeah.
right.
I wouldn't even want a round trip to go to Mars. I have no desire to go to Mars. Just the fact that, the perchlorates in the soil would probably rust through anything you had pretty quickly. I don't think you're going to survive very much without.
Not only
with
that, I
technology
heard-
now.
I would very much honor and admire the heroes that do that.
Yeah, but we need better
I was
technology before we
told-
go to Mars.
I was told that there's no McDonald's on Mars, and so you know what? That's already
There's
a deal
no
breaker
porn on
for me.
Mars. Why would you want to go? Unless you bring a
The
rig with you.
internet coverage is awful.
Yeah, Wi-Fi sucks up there, dude. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's like, oh, it's passing. It's passing. The satellite's passing. I gotta download this music quick, and it's gone.
Yeah, you get half an MP3.
Oh, you're forgetting the, what is it, couple of hours of time delay? 40
yeah.
minutes of time delay.
It's like what is it?
40 minutes for a
That still
response.
amazes me. They're able to do maneuvering with that type of time delay, right? I mean, they have to plan whatever is hours ahead of time for it to actually, have a type of ignition at the right place in order to land properly. That to me is unimaginable how that happens.
Yeah, I would say it varies. It varies between like 15 and like I think 40 minutes. And so depending on where it is in its orbit relative to us. And so imagine saying, "Hey, what's up?" and then not hearing a response for like half an hour. That would be really shitty. That's no, I wouldn't want to do it. The Wi-Fi sucks. The food is terrible. There's nothing but sand. And you know what? If I wanted nothing but sand and disappointment, I would have gone to Brooksville and to Croom. Just go there.
Can we send G-Man
Yeah,
to Mars?
I mean, I would be okay with that personally.
Yeah, that we can aboard that.
And the sand is coarse and it gets everywhere.
Yeah. So Elon Musk, if you're listening, get on that.
Yeah, don't screw setting up a roadster, man. Put G-Man in that capsule.
Yeah. Fire his ass up there.
You would film that, wouldn't you?
I mean, that I'd be okay with that. I go, okay, so G-Man, you're gonna hear a really loud noise and then a lot of shaking. Don't panic. Oh god, be like as soon as no, you're gonna be okay. G-Man slowly closes the capsule, turns around, light this bitch.
And then you get a surf down like Dark Star. If you've seen that movie where he's just surfing down at the end of the movie to the planet.
And then of course what I would do personally is that as the rocket is taking off, I would just start playing the James Bond theme song.
Dun, 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 dun. Speaking of which, you may not know this, but Roger Moore just recently passed.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, right? I mean, he was like 89. I didn't think he was that old. Holy shit. But yeah, Roger Moore just passed.
All the
I mean, look at all the people. I mean, Tim Conway passed. I mean, if Betty White dies this year, I'm done.
Nah.
Yeah, because I mean, I just figured she's going to outlive everybody.
Everyone is like, just strap him to the payload fairing. He'll be fine.
That's what yeah, exactly. He'll survive, man. At least for a little while.
At least, for a bit.
What was 2017? Tim Conway died this year.
Let's see, but Red would be the ugliest person there. Yes, I would be the ugliest person on Mars.
Oh, not Roger Moore. Was it Roger Moore 2017? Oh, then who was it just died recently? Maybe you're right, but who one of the Bonds just died recently? I thought.
I mean, the only famous death that I'm actually following right now is Sean Clown.
Who just died? I just read
Slipknot's daughter.
I don't know. I just read the news on somebody. I thought it was Roger Moore, but you might be right.
Anywho,
Now,
what's the next question?
I don't know. Somebody died.
I asked one before the one about the horizon. If you ignore the totality of evidence, what is the best argument for flat Earth that you have heard so far?
That's like asking me what's the best way to have.
I'll answer that one.
diarrhea.
I'll answer that one.
Steve, your answer is my answer.
Because
at this point.
it's stupid, of course, but of course to a flat earther.
Yes.
If any, you're asking me obviously that the fact that we are at the equator because the Earth is rotating at several thousand miles an hour, over a 24-hour period. The fact that we are constantly changing vector, right? And when you're accelerating, like the gravitron, how you feel like you're pushed against the wall. So if we're spinning at all these supposedly fast speeds, why are we not thrown outwards? because we're constantly changing the vector with what would be a linear force perpendicular to the point on the equator, right?
There is, and it's measurable.
Yes, it is.
And it's been measured, yes.
0.3%.
It's very, very small because the Earth is so large that the fact that we're spinning actually pretty relatively slow compared to the fact compared to the size. That's why it takes 24 hours. And of course,
that's precisely it, right?
Yeah.
Sit on your spinning chair and let it spin for 24 hours. And tell me when you have noticed the spin when you have felt the rotation of the chair.
So what would happen if we're on a pulsar, spinning at million times a microsecond kind of thing?
If you were on a pulsar, even though you're spinning really, really fast, you would still be crushed.
You'd be crushed.
Flattened down to basically a few microns.
Do you realize that on a pulsar or neutron star that the crust is really pretty thin? It's still measurable. It's still actually in millimeters, but the crust is so compact that if there's actually a crack in it, there's like a quake, that actually will send ripples light years away. Gravitational force.
Yes. And
that's how powerful that is.
What was the statistic that 1 centimeter cube of neutron star material weighs as much as Mount Everest?
Well, yeah. If you had a golf ball size of either neutronium or even a white dwarf, which is electron degenerative pressures, but it's still dense enough that if you dropped it, it would make the Earth look like Swiss cheese. I mean, it would just be constantly going back and forth as the Earth rotated until eventually it settled in the middle, right?
Mm-hmm. So. Basically. To answer your question, you would, 1, die, and 2, be flattened to just a few microns. So yeah, you would definitely you would be.
But would you be flung out?
No, you would be very dead. You'd be very.
But anyways, Barney, you asked me what I thought would be at least an argument to somebody who doesn't understand what we just explained. Would be the only possible. Somebody could go, I don't understand the science and therefore this, but then after you explain to them, they might get it, right? So is that a good answer?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Mine like that is that the horizon is constantly further away than we calculated it should be. That refraction, the same refraction that I was talking about, the flat plane bringing the horizon up until it fades away, is what makes the horizon look farther away, what makes us look beyond the horizon.
Yeah, and another thing would be, well, no, I don't think that would be a good argument anyway. So, no, that's about it. I mean, there's just not really any, to me, reasonable reasons why a flat earther is the way they are, except that, 1, they just don't understand, or 2, they want it for the money, like journalism. I'm convinced journalism with Poe. I've had conversations with journalism both on air and off air, so is Reds. I am thoroughly convinced he doesn't give a shit. He just wants the Patreon. He just wants the dollars out of it. I mean, what? I mean, look what happened with him. He actually made himself look like a complete idiot, and he didn't have any effect. Nobody stopped being a patron to him, even though he was like, interesting. Oh yeah, this disproves me. Interesting.
That became one hell of a meme.
But he got caught with his pants down. His Patreon hasn't changed. It's still around 1,400.
He got caught with his pants down, with his foot in his mouth, with his head up his ass. I mean, at this point, the people that follow him have no standards.
No, at all. I just can't imagine people giving him funding to promote Flat Earth. It's just mind-boggling.
It's one of the most frustrating aspects of humanity.
Whatever. Anyways, guys, we're going to wrap this up, I think. We've got our 2 hours. Red, stick around after the call, though.
Absolutely.
And then I want to thank everybody. And again, I want to especially thank my new patrons. I want to especially thank the people I've donated through the Super Chats and the PayPal. Every bit of it adds up. I live on this channel. As you guys may know, I haven't collected anything from Non Sequitur yet. So I'm literally living just off what I'm making off of these channels. So I appreciate that. I will be going on vacation. Not very long. It has been postponed 24 hours because Roof's flight was delayed and canceled. So I will not be leaving tomorrow, though I will be out doing stuff, and NonSec has something else. I don't remember what it was. And so I will be away Wednesday and Thursday, maybe back on Friday, but I might extend longer. So I don't know what I'll be on for Non Sequitur this week, but I definitely won't be on tomorrow, Wednesday, or Thursday. but on Friday I might. So Dave, if you're listening, please let Kyle know that. It has been postponed. I might stay an extra day if some friends wanted to hang out. But and by the way, you're welcome to go with me. Allie can go with me. Sweet Heathen go with me. Cheshire can go with me. Short as a Pussy can go with me. Kawasa not so much. But if any of you want to go with me, I'm gonna have a fun time in LA. It's all expense paid, room service, free drinks. I might have my school friends come down, like a friend of mine named Vanessa. So I'm gonna enjoy it. I'm just getting away from this bullshit for a while. So I just wanted my patrons to know that I won't be doing much for a couple of days. However, there will be the GDC channel. John Peterson, it will be running channel shows on that. He'll be having late night hangouts coming up here far more often, and some other people have expressed interest. So the GDC's channel, which is part of this channel, I own both. If you guys want a place to go in the middle of the night, then GDC is where it's at. I was surprised how many people were watching, even though it hasn't been active for very long. Still was about 60 people, which isn't very much, but for a channel that's been inactive for quite some time, that's actually pretty huge. So if you haven't subscribed to the Great Debate Community channel, go do so. The link is in the video description, and I'm going to be trying to manage both these channels in between doing non sequitur. So. And I want to thank everybody for the support that a lot of people have reached out to me and asked me, why I'm not on non sequitur as much. I'm on non sequitur every time for the most part because that's our show. But Kyle does other shows with other people, and that's fine. He doesn't have his own channel. I do. I have 2 other channels. So a long time ago, I kind of said we should only be doing 4 non sequitur a week, and so that's kind of what it is 4 non sequitur a week, and then all the other shows that he wants to do on that channel. Anyways, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you guys very much. And I'm going to try to do a live stream on location. We'll see how that goes. But until then, good night. And leave a comment in the video description. Like, too. Thank you.